I am here today to really talk about the five-star program and what it is. And I think the starting core principle of this work, of this five-star program, is really providing a framework for branch success. It translates AAUW's strategic priorities, expanding higher education, pathways, advancing economic security, and championing civil rights into concrete branch level actions that we can plan for, deliver on, and hopefully celebrate together. Today's program is also a product of your feedback. And special thanks again to your co-presidents, Jill and Carolyn, who graciously gathered a lot of feedback and shared with me what you all are kind of having, thoughts, questions, clarification on regarding the entire Fire Star program. So again, this is going to be a collaborative effort, and I really do thank you all for taking some time of your morning today, and again to Jill and Carolyn specifically, who really helped tremendously in getting and building or and helping me construct the content for today's session. When we talk about five star, we really are talking about, again, that roadmap, that path to branch success. And part of that is really, and part of my conversation today is really going to be around connecting how the five-star criteria, how the 2025 strategic plan rollout, and all of the public policy priorities, all of that kind of interweaves and interlaces with this program and how it all uplifts that work together. So again, this is really about sustainable, mission-aligned progress. Hopefully not busy work. We hope that is not something that folks think about it, because it really is a roadmap to branch success and to branch health and I think longevity as a whole. So again, I just want to kind of share those brief overarching views. Again, thank you again for the time, and let's really dive into things today. But I would be remiss if we don't start out with recognizing you, branch leaders, and the branches that you are spearhead in your communities for doing the great work in FY25 and achieving some five-star success. I would be remiss in not saying, this is hot off the presses. No one really knows who has what star yet. A lot of this is going to be officially unveiled next week, but I did want to give you all a sneak peek today as to the branches and the stars that have been achieved for FY25. So again, this is reflective of all your work, the meetings, a lot, especially in public policy. The communications governance had a huge rise and uptick across the board for so many of our branches. And we're really, really pleased today to be able to share this with you to show that, show the branches the success that you've had. And I really want to take this moment to kind of celebrate these achievements together. Like I said, official announcements are going to be rolling out next week. The website isn't even up to date yet on this. So again, you are getting the first earliest snapshot of these awards. So again, I want to take that moment to pause, give recognition, give thanks. This is a collective effort. I know it asks a lot of many branches, and it's not on the shoulders of one, but of many. It takes a village, of course. So I'm very, very pleased to show this today. And again, more to come, official announcements, letters, you name it, will be going out next week. But I did want to give this early preview to you all this weekend to kind of share with you, the collective work you're doing together and the recognition you definitely deserve. So thank you all tremendously so much. And let's get really diving into the real work of today. So the first thing I really wanted to touch on and get us started with our conversation on five star is really how it interweaves with the broader strategic plan of AAUW and why five star is so crucial in ensuring that branches are mission aligned, mission centric. So the first real pillar of not a five star, the first pillar of the strategic plan, higher education pathways, really correlates strongly with the programming and governance stars. So this pillar in particular is about removing barriers in education, widening on-ramps to degrees and credentials. And at the branch level, that translates into programs around Title IX, rights enforcement, campus safety, affordability, student debt. I mean, you can run the gamut of so much of the breadth of our mission and what we do together. And that all uplifts and connects with that higher education pathway, which is really such a significant portion of the Strategic Plan 2.0 that rolled out earlier in the spring. On the governance side, we ask branches to build and refresh, have a simple strategic plan that mirrors AUW's pillars. So we hope that when we rolled out the strategic plan earlier this year, you took a lot of those resources to heart and have been kind of having conversations similar to these kinds of sessions as you're having today to really kind of do the thinking of how do we align our work with the strategic plan. And we hope that the five-star program is, again, that roadmap to helping you make those connections and helping you make that framework more sensible and hopefully more achievable for your branch. The inclusive policy change pillar is, of course, really correlates with our public policy and advocacy star. The 2025-27 public policy priorities are guide where we speak up again more on pay equity, Title IX protections, voting rights, caregiving support, and access to reproductive health care. Those are all a part of that pillar. And again, so that this pillar really are in alignment. Branches can, of course, achieve their public policy and advocacy star by, doing a variety of work. Having that state lobby day is important. Voter education and registration, highly important. Engaging with the Action Network. Again, this is all helping feed up and give you the information you need so you can be holding forums, so you can be having educational sessions at the grassroots level to, again, spread awareness on this key pillar of AUW so that, again, at the communal level, uplifting to the national level. And that is the five-star program is an underlying part of that. Of course, organizational sustainability is hand in glove with advancement in governance. I can't say enough that, this is all about sustainability of the organization and so that we have the means to staff the mission reliably. And that cannot be done without contributions. It would be great if we lived in a world where dues alone were enough to sustain all the various work that AUW does. It would be wonderful, but that unfortunately is not true. We do unfortunately need contributions in and above our dues and to support the work of the organization. So that's why the advancement criteria is so pivotal. It has greatest needs support that's really tightly woven in there. And that is because greatest needs does give us that ability to be flexible. It does allow us to do salary negotiation work, which would not have had the seed money to begin without, greatest needs support and greatest needs funding. So a lot of the advancement metrics definitely ties so heavily with organizational sustainability. And of course, having fundraising policies and having a fundraising rubric that helps you do mission work locally helps, again, with your own coffers and being able to do the event and support your local missions and your local initiatives as well. So advancement is not just a national sort of credo. It is really something that you should be thinking about as a branch at the local level as well. Governance, of course, relates to sustainability. This is also about emphasizing succession planning. The new this year is our environmental scan. The DEI toolkit continues to be a presence, and just completing the survey and participating and going through the assessment analysis and being able to report out on your work, going just through that annual branch survey process, even if you may not achieve a star, is still important because it still helps you maintain alignment and help make sure your focus is where it should be within the strategic plan. And then lastly, communications and external relations. Communications as a whole, and I'm going to say this a few times probably today, it really is an amplifier. It's a megaphone. It really emphasizes and calls out all the work that we do broadly. So when you're doing mission aligned posting on your social media, when you're making sure you have an updated website, a dedicated comms person, all of that is integral to being able to spread the message. It kind of helps us, like I said, it provides that megaphone. We have only so much reach at the national level, helping us be able to kind of trickle that out and spread that out to your own networks, to your own communities, is really vital in it being able to ensure that we are spreading the message of the work of AAUW, hopefully planting some seeds for future prospects. You never know, but all of that is really integral to, again, that underlying support of all that we do. I'm going to move on here. I am not going to go into depth here at this kind of top level overview of the five-star program. Carolyn and Jill have provided you all graciously with a nice little one-pager actually that really surmises a lot of this work. So again, not going to go into detail here. I'm going to have some slides on each of these areas specifically where I'm going to kind of go into clarity, do's, don'ts, some quick tips, but really not going to go into the meat and potatoes of what each underlying, criteria is for each of these areas. But I do want to stress one thing here on this slide before we delve into some of the specifics. Really, we wanted to, and this is something we did in our last five-star cycle, and we're going to continue to do for FY26 and beyond, is create more optionality for branches. We know that certain branches have particular focuses or have different strengths. We want to make sure that the criteria for five-star meets you where you are. So if you feel that you are stronger in certain areas, we want you to be able to pick and choose the aspects of each criteria that meets the strengths of what your leadership, what your membership, and what you as leaders can bring to the table for each of these areas. So we really wanted to structure things where there is some optionality, where you're able to pick and choose what you lean into the most. And this is really going to come really kind of high key with advancement, because that is one area that we certainly know that many branches do have some, that have some issues on. So we wanted to really stress that, you're able to pick and choose and kind of almost have this a la carte menu for how you can approach the various aspects of the five-star program. So that is one thing I certainly wanted to stress. Programming is still kind of the outlier there. It's only one criterion, but it really is, that important, holding those four programs. But outside of that, the rest of the program for five-star does allow you to kind of pick and choose. And that's what I'm going to go into here now, is really delving into each aspect of the five-star program and starting to give into, some of the details, some of the specifics, some of the tips and tricks that we have, and then hoping that, in future conversations, and I'm going to be doing a lot of listening today as well to gather some feedback for the team internally to make sure that we are making adjustments accordingly. And we're very iterative in this entire five-star process. FY25, like I said, we changed the timing, we elongated the process. We also, did a lot of things differently, and we are eager to do more of that in FY26 and beyond. Being responsive to feedback is really important for us. So advancement. This is one that obviously is near and dear to my heart since I am on the advancement team. But what is this? What does this mean broadly? And then I'm going to go into some quick tips and tricks on, just some things that I think every branch can lean into if you're having some struggles with this area in particular. One question that does come up quite often is, how does membership, and determined, or what does that look like? Obviously, members can renew on a more rolling basis right now. So I get a lot of questions from leaders as to, oh, well, what went when, or, how should I tabulate X, Y, and Z? So to really make it homogenous for all of our branches, we use the February 1 count. This is a particular advancement. We build this metric internally, and it is a snapshot of your membership at a particular given time, obviously at, around February 1, where we use this as a kind of a static metric for determining per capita counting, for determining, retention metrics, but it was really a way for us to have this homogeneous data point that we can use from year to year to be able to kind of compare and contrast to as we're making those determinations. One of the other things that I want to call out here is, again, when we talk about optionality, is some of the new options that we have in the advancement metric this year. One of them being the increasing the number of individual donors. So this is one, again, if you had 10 donors one year and you have 11 donors the next year, congratulations. That's it. That's all you need to have in order to qualify for this. And we're going to be able to provide you with information on where you were last year versus what you might need this year in the advancement snapshot. More to come on that later. But again, so this is another new option where, again, we're trying to provide different avenues, different opportunities, because we do know that some branches have voiced some consternation regarding, being able to grow year over year consistently, year to year. There are obviously challenges. There are obviously times where, sometimes you're going to have some issues with fundraising as you did over the year past. So we want to be able to provide options so that if you're having a year where things are not looking good, the book sale did not do as well as we had hoped, there's some other things that you can kind of lean into. And so that's where I'm going to say that, for branch giving, Defend Higher Education Fund and the Public Policy Fund, these are two new areas of funding that we provided this year in light of, some of the climate around some of the work that AAUW holds near and dear. So we wanted to provide new funds so that leaders, members, donors can support these areas specifically if you want to kind of bolster AAUW's areas and funding in those areas. We want to be able to provide these areas because, kind of going into the Nick Whistle bullet down at the end, we took away the Nick Whistle bullet for the criterion for advancement, obviously due to the shift in organizational support with NASPA. So we are shifting from that Nick Whistle criterion to this new criterion around higher education and public policy funds, because we know leaders expressed a very strong interest in being able to fund those areas. On this next slide are some really quick tips that I kind of want to share for advancement, particularly in terms of things to kind of keep in mind, as well as I think some easy low-hanging fruit for what you might want to potentially lean into if you want to try to earn the advancement star. One thing is obviously make sure you're up to date on your branch roster. That is really pivotal, especially as we get in towards that Feb 1 count. If you want to make sure that we're getting the most accurate data for your branch, especially around and making sure that we have a nice consistent number for that Feb 1 count, is really important to stay on top of your membership numbers, view it via the community hub. And we do have a host of resources on making sure your rosters are up to date and accessing your roster, manipulating your roster, you name it, on our community hub tools and resources page. And I'll have a resource page here at the very end. And if not, I will make sure that when I send these slides out, so you don't feel free, you have to, write down all of this ravenously. I will share these slides so that you can have them to review at your leisure. The contribution report form, again, is just a quick way to be able to send in some of those donations. We do try to push folks to use our renewals and donations application within the community hub, but the contribution report form, it continues to be a solid resource for leaders to send in contributions that may not always have, that may have different fund designations. One thing that I also want to hark on, and I'm also being mindful of my time here, so I want to keep moving here, is the Legacy Circle is really an easy way, and I'm going to kind of reinforce this and revisit this later when I kind of do a summary of these items. But the Legacy Circle enrollment is a very easy way to kind of tick off one box of the advancement star. You only need to recruit one individual, that is it. And that individual doesn't need to even report out how much they might be leaving in their AAUW and their estate plans. They just need to say, yep, I'm signing up. Fill out the form. That is all it takes. And like I said, one individual is all that you need to kind of tick off that one box and get qualification for that. Public policy. So here is where oops. There we go. Sorry. So here is where I think the rubber hits the road for a lot of our members. This is an obvious passion point for so many of our branches and our branch leaders. And so I wanted to kind of share, just broadly, some of the talking points that you can use, some of the programming areas that you can use, because this really is AUW's agenda policy North Star. It really sets the tone for so much of the work, and it can set the tone for a lot of your programming, which you can count for public policy as well as for your programming stars. So I'm going to mention that a couple times here as well to kind of make sure I'm driving that point home. So really quickly on how you can align events. Education really is about prioritizing our strong Title IX enforcement, inclusive curriculum, free from censorship, and equitable access to higher ed. Again, that Defend Higher Ed Fund is key. It includes support for campus childcare, policies that reduce non-tuition barriers, and locally, that can look like Title IX, know your rights forums. That can be, campus listening sessions. That can be, briefings on affordability and student debt burdens. I mean, there's a host of programs that you can build around certain aspects of these pillars within the policies and the priorities and actions for public policy. Economic security is kind of another, I think, an easy one. Here, you can really align programming around equal pay days, and that's one of the timing tips down at the bottom. There's a lot of calendar updates around various equal pay days that you can use as a benchmark for your own programming or to align your own programming. And I think that's a good way to kind of heighten and elevate the economic security aspects of public policy. And all of the things that I'm saying here in turn regarding policy, there is a robust guide online. My colleagues in the policy team have been doing a lot of work, really reaching out to state public policy and branch public policy chairs, and which is why it's really important that, part of the public policy star is to make sure you have a branch public policy chair, because that enables you to kind of get on that pipeline for receiving so much integral information. And just really quickly on civil rights and social justice. Again, this is just another pillar that you can build programming around, from voting rights, freedom from harassment. There's a lot of things that you can do around this that, again, our public policy team does have an extensive toolkit, and that's kind of, dovetailing into that, toolkit here. You can use that advocacy toolkit that has so many how-tos and good support for you to build programming around these areas. They really have done almost a kind of a turnkey job with being able to enable programs around advocacy, if that is something that you're passionate about. Co-sponsorship and collaborations isn't just unique to public policy, but public policy is one area that is an easy segue, if you will, into some collaborations. Why co-sponsor? Co-sponsorship does help reach new audiences and amplify, especially within public policy, voter education and advocacy work. As long as AAUW plays an active role, I think that's the key thing here with the collaborations and our collaborations policy writ large. So I'm going to share with some quick do's on, collaborating with other organizations like the League of Women Voters. It's really about, making sure you're using the right terminology, such as, say collaboration or co-sponsor versus partner or partnership. There's some legal ramifications for using certain types of terms. So we want to make sure that we're giving you the best guidance on that. So again, collaboration or co-sponsor is really more favorable than partner or partnership. Protect the brand. Obviously, when you are using, AAUW's name and logo, make sure that that is being respected. Spell out how branding and permissions as appropriate when you are making these collaboration opportunities, and make sure, again, when you're making these collaborations, you're putting it all in writing. That's obviously super important. Any financial or in-kind support that needs to be described, any agreements that need to be made, again, make sure you're just doing your due diligence across the board. And a lot of this is spelled out in our board policy book, and there is a specific collaborations policy subheader within that book. I'll have a link for that in our resources at the very end. So you'll have to get directly keyed into that, as well as the fundraising policy, because one of the things that we do here as well, and this is the one don't on collaborations, is obviously there is some in-kind or some financial components to collaboration, but that type of financial investment ends when it's just a direct, contribution to another organization or entity. We do have a fundraising policy on that in particular, and again, that's also in the board policy book. But just making an outright check and that is it in terms of your level of collaboration, that doesn't meet the standard for broader collaboration, and so that is something that we discourage. But again, all the other stuff and the full collaboration policy will give you a really nice rubric on what the cans, the shoulds, the don'ts of collaborating looks like. But again, I don't want to leave this slide without highlighting that, working with the League of Women Voters or an entity of similar stature is definitely a very easy way of being able to share some of our public policy priorities to a broader audience. And it's a good segue being able to, the advocacy toolkit also speaks to a lot of this. The advocacy toolkit will also, of course, share that we should be nonpartisan in any collaborations around policy, being sure we invite all the party candidates. They might not show up, given some of our stances on issues, but you did your part, you did your due diligence. But so again, you make sure you make those extensions. You'll see some mentions on documentation sometimes throughout my presentation, but that's really more for your purposes than for our purposes. When we are collecting data, it's all going to be through the branch survey. I'll have a couple more slides on that as well later on. But when you're talking about documentation, any sort of event or any sort of flyers, materials, collateral, etc., that's more for your purposes only, to help you when you do sit down at the end of the year in April when the surveys come out, and you have a good repository of information to act on and move from when you are sitting down to fill out the survey. So governance and sustainability, this one came up, I think, in particular because of one of the new aspects in FY26 for governance and sustainability, which is the environmental scan and what that actually looks like and what that is. So writ large, governance and sustainability is where we make sure the branches can keep delivering impact year after year. It's about making you sustainable as a branch, just as, AAUW needs to be sustainable as a national organization. The five-star criteria in this, talk about, succession planning, DEI leadership, but the new aspect here is the environmental scan. And it's bigger than just DEI work, but obviously DEI plays a pivotal role here. But what is an environmental scan? What does that look like? What is it necessary? And I think as we go forward with our governance and sustainability criteria going forward, the environmental scan might overwrite some of the other bullets within this particular star, because it really is a one-stop page snapshot of just where you are as an organization. So that is across your membership, your leadership, your programs, your audiences, your communications. It's really kind of this sort of checkup for your branch as an environmental scan. So the things that the kind of prompts you ask yourself when you're engaging in the process of doing an environmental scan of your branch is, for example, who should participate and when? I'm sorry, I forgot that part. But so this is really your board probably should have a role in this part of your governance and sustainability star when you're doing environmental scan. So that'll be your president, programs, yeah, treasurer, maybe your diversity officer, which is another aspect of the governance and sustainability star. And maybe invite some other members as well that might not have a leadership stake in the conversation, but still have a viable point of perspective that might be worth sharing. So the prompts that you should be using in environmental scan, that's where I wanted to really lead into is who joins. For when you're talking about membership questions, it's like who joins, who stays, what's your retention looking like, leaders in the pipeline for leadership. So again, this kind of dovetails a little bit with succession planning, but it's really kind of saying, do you have a roadway to kind of pass the baton, pass the torch to your next level of leaders so that you can do other work and you're not just being a leader in a position for year upon year upon year. What does that look like? When it comes to programming, is like, who are we reaching? What topics drew the most attendance? Where are the gaps? When it comes to communication, is like which channels are reaching people? What barriers do we have? What things do you not have? Like, for example, I see a lot when we do our communication star about social media. Many branches do not have social media. So is that a potential gap? Is that a potential barrier that is impeding your ability to be able to market your branch. So these are things that these are the kind of questions that kind of help you build out this broader one-page environmental scan, which is this kind of health assessment of all the varying aspects of your branch. I'm going to power through a few of these other aspects here, but I just want to really kind of one thing that I really want to call out before I move on to the next slide is really the low-hanging fruit for governance and sustainability is just participating in the annual branch survey. It's just that simple. If you submit a survey regardless of anything else, you only then need two other areas within the governance and sustainability star to be able to qualify for that star. So just participating in the survey process really gives you a leg up. And we really did see actually a surge in governance and sustainability stars across the spectrum because, again, with just that one aspect, you only need two other areas to really qualify for a star here. So programming, again, is one of those things that is just writ large. You need all of it to qualify. But the programming star is, again, about visibility, community-facing work, and work that advances AAUW strategic plan. So that's, again, around educational pathways, economic security, and inclusion. What does being aligned look like? So again, that's kind of touching on what I know that's why I've spent some time with the public policy because it really can be, like Title IX forums, equal pay day events, campus affordability, child care briefings, anything around having a conversation on DEI. And again, there's toolkits and guidance online for a lot of aspects of this. And then I want you, when you're thinking of programming, especially when in line with 5-star, you can be efficient and kind of get a lot of two birds with one stone type of initiatives where, for instance, if you do two policy aligned programs, one DEI program and one like higher ed or skills-based access event, that you can cross count a lot of that work. So that way you're kind of, you're being efficient with your time. And so you don't have to do, reductive or redundant programming to try to hit all the benchmarks. You can hit a few, you can do one or two, but then kind of collapse and consolidate what those count for. So that's the cross counting. Timing and visibility. I see folks drawing on this slide. Oh, that went back. But yeah, so yeah, that's the other real thing I really want to call out on there is really being able to capitalize and do an efficient mixture of programming. So that way you're able to kind of knock out multiple areas of the 5-star program with maybe just one program, which I think is really efficient use of timing. And again, evidence is kind of used here, but more as a call for, what works best for you to help catalog at the end of a year, how many programs, what those programs covered, etc. So we won't be likely doing any sort of audits on the nitty-gritty details of everything that you're doing at a programming level, but it's good for you to have for future reference. And I see some questions popping in. There will be some time for questions for Q&A at the end, and that's when I'll kind of take a moment to take stock of all the items in chat.
Excuse me, Tremayne, but I am monitoring the chat, so I'll be working with you on that after.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. So moving on to our communications and external relations star. So this is some quick tips. Again, as I kind of shared at the top of our conversation, communications really is the amplifier for everything else AAUW. So really, having a comms person, doing the mission aligned posts, having, content in your local newsletters from national, and making sure your leaders are subscribed to getting the latest and greatest information from AAUW really helps us help you really uplift, certain items, key points, hot topic areas, burning issues, as unfortunately, have come, especially from our advocacy side of things, for certain. There's been a lot of hot news and hot button items that we certainly want to cover and make sure that you are aware of and you're on top of. And if you aren't subscribed, if you're not receiving those communications, you're going to be out of the loop. And that's going to be a detriment, especially as a leader, to your branch. So we want to make sure that your members are being empowered by not only what you are sharing for your local efforts, but being able to kind of share some of that, some of the local programming, I mean, the national programming as well. And that's why we have the resubscribe link. Membership Matters is, vital, vital, vital for a lot of this information to be able to be sure that, members are getting what they want to hear. Now, it's not mandatory. Now, I did get a few questions and comments on, is it mandatory that, every member is getting everything? That is not the case. It's really more for leaders to be receiving information, not your, everyday member. We certainly know that members, have a have a stopping point to say, hey, no, enough's enough, and we totally get that. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the moment with them, but we do want to make sure that we're setting leaders up for success by having as much information as possible. Um, so I'm going to then go into some quick wins by stars. So these are the things that I think are really viable and attainable for a wide variety of branches, big and small, that I hope you can lean into a little bit to get some more information on, or at least be able to better attain some of these stars. For advancement, I think I covered this a little bit, where the legacy circle recruitment is really, I think, one of the lowest hanging fruit there. It's really just one member to be recruited for that. You don't really have to do anything else. The member, again, does not have to even divulge, how they are leaving, AUW and their plans, or, the amounts or anything like that. Nothing has to be shared or divulged other than, yes, I signed up, I'm a member of the legacy circle. And then that's an easy, way to get at least one at criterion of the advancement star. For public policy, I think appointing a chair is a good one. But I also think, one of the easier ones there is, Action Network signups. There's no quota, there's no amount that you need for minimum signups. You just need to make sure you're promoting Action Network signups at events, in your newsletters, on social media, etc. There are various ways that you can be promoting that. And so long as you're ticking off that box, again, that is one aspect of the public policy and advocacy star that you can, I think, more readily achieve. Governance and sustainability. I really think, the environmental scan is important. And like I said, it is that really good gut check, health check of your branch. But I think the really low hanging fruit there is just participating in the survey. It's super easy to just be able to, again, you may not even achieve a star, but you can at least easily achieve, that aspect of the governance star just by listening out and participating in the survey. For programming, again, this is the tough one, because you do need those four programs. So I think the real quick tip here, the easy aspect of this would be the cross pollination, if you will. Being able to do a policy program will count for public policy and advocacy as well as the programming star. Doing something on DEI would count for governance as well as the programming star. So by blocking and tackling your work, and or kind of grouping and aggregating things in that type of fashion, you can kind of, and even fundraising having a big fundraising program. Again, you're supporting the mission of AAUW. That again can count towards programming, depending on how you slice and dice it. So there are definitely ways where you can do one event and tick off multiple boxes across the board, and towards achieving your stars. And communications, I think this one is the social media posts, I think, are some of the easier aspects of this. AUW is quite prolific in trying to push out, social media, content. Lorena and her team and the rest of the comms team are very great at, trying to stay in the moment, talking with our policy crew as well when hot button items are coming out there. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to necessarily create your own content. It's great if you do. Obviously, having locally relevant content for folks that are subscribed to your various pages is important. But being able to kind of uplift some of these national topics, and again, you're not having to reinvent the wheel. You just have to cut and paste from what national is posting, is again another easy lift and an easy way to kind of get your foot in the door on the communications aspect. So I'm going to wrap up here with some kind of nuts and bolts and kind of what next to suspect, and then some resources before we get into any of the Q&A and other questions. So the timeline and kind of where we go from here. In January will be the next really big update, and this is going to be that mid-year advancement snapshot. And this is going to be giving branch leaders progress on every aspect of the advancement criteria up through December 31st. So this will let you know your member counts. This will let you know, when we talk about that new criterion related to growing individual donors, if you have 10 1 year or 11 next or so, all of this is going to give you that kind of, you know, mid-year pulse of, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, or this is what we need to do, or this is, you know, this is what we need to do in order to kind of hit those final lines within for advancement. I think it's really important. The in May is when we're going to be doing the the FY27 criteria. So this way you can plan ahead and have that information in hand going into your summer planning, and then obviously into fall for obviously implementing and boots on the ground with doing all your programmatic work. But we did this differently this year that seemed to have some level of success. We're very happy that, you know, leaders were very receptive to getting a lot of this information well in advance as opposed to a little late, as we did in prior years. And so this is something we're going to try and continue going forward. The survey for FY26 will be opening again from April through June. This will be accompanied by the checklist and full question PDF that you can download in advance, and then you have that entire quarter, 3 months, to review, be able to kind of coalesce as a branch, as a branch board if you need to kind of then put your heads together and figure out, you know, and this is where, you know, documentation previously can be helpful. But again, whatever works for you individually as a branch to kind of make sure that you're kind of hitting all these benchmarks, you're checking all these boxes. But yeah, whatever collective activity works for you is what is important there for cataloging that. And then of course ongoing, if any aspect of this is going to change, for example, if some aspects of criterion might change or the timing, you know, membership matters is where you're going to be able to get all of that information. So it's important that you're subscribed. If you're not getting it, feel free to shoot me an email after today, especially if you are a leader, that you should be receiving and hopefully reviewing and sharing the contents of Membership Matters with your branch. But this is one of the best ways of being up to speed on anything and everything related to the 5-star program and certainly any updates. So if it's not on the survey, this is something that we definitely heard from quite a few branches that, you know, obviously we try to be as extensive and comprehensive in the survey as possible, but the survey really is kind of focused around the individual criterion of the 5-star program. And so if you're doing work that is not necessarily coloring within those lines, how do you talk about it? We are going to be receptive to that feedback that we certainly got in this last survey cycle, and we're going to be offering a few more free text boxes, you know, that kind of give a branch an opportunity to opine on, you know, other aspects of their work that might not be covered here. Obviously, there's so much more to public policy, for example, that a lot of our branches do that isn't necessarily covered in the multiple choice question, you know, related to public policy. We absolutely want to be able to collect that information, and we're going to be working across teams internally to make sure we have questions that fit those some of those needs. But when in doubt, if you have a question or any item that does not, you know, align with the survey, does not align with any of the criterion, but you want to share it or you think it's supplemental information that's worth us knowing, I also have here you know, a sample subject line that you can kind of, you know, if you want to send me an email or related to that. This is just another way to be able to share information outside of what the survey might be accounting for that you still want to share and think is appropriate, specifically, even if it's not specifically tailored to 5-star. If you think it's pertinent, we want to know about it so that we can be implementing it in the future. Service and responsiveness. Again, this is something that we hear often, and unfortunately, it is to my, you know, it is not something I'm happy with. That, you know, some, you know, members will send out communications to us and do not get prompt service. We are a very small team, unfortunately, and as some of you know, some of AAUW's history, we did lose staff, you know, some years ago related to our customer service. and we still remain, a lean but mighty, but still a lean team when it comes to answering the hundreds, if not thousands, of messages that come to connect. So one way that I want to uplift, if you ever feel that you've kind of sent something to us and you have not received a prompt response, is office hours. I know Colorado members have been pioneers on our office hours sessions at our very onset, and I know Linda's here today as well as one of those pioneers. So office hours is a great way to be able to uplift a question or an item, and we will absolutely, try to prioritize those items when they come through. But it's a great way to uplift, say, hey, yeah, I sent you this email. Would you mind, kind of, giving us a response? And by the way, I have another question. Would love for you to answer that. So, the team is always happy to, kind of read through those, try to address things up in advance. And if not, obviously address them on the call itself. If you have five-star related questions, you can, of course, email me with the same kind of level of, if you don't, for whatever reason, you don't hear from me, by all means, you either, popcorn it in my inbox, or by all means, join us for office hours as well, to be able to kind of say, hey, I would love a response on X, Y, and Z. Would, love to hear back. And that's, again, it's another way for us to circle the wagons and go back to an old ticket, go back to an old email, and be able to give you that response. Last portion of the slide, we were really just at the very tail end of my remarks, and it was really just going to get into the resources. So I am going to share my screen just really to kind of help guide you to where you can find some of these resources on the web. And of course, like I said, I will share the direct links with my slide and presentation. But if give me a moment, share my screen here.
You have 5 moments.
I will not take long. So this is obviously our homepage. I think I'm going to point you towards two pivotal locations where you can get a good sense of just where you want to, the latest membership relation, five-star community hub, you name it. So for that, that'll be under our membership tab. And here, right at the top, you don't really have to go too far. You don't have to scroll down and, even get into the weeds here. You can go right into our leader resources and tools. The five-star program, of course, will be here and updated for all things FY26 and 27 once we, get into, next year. But I'm going to go back. Leader resources and tools is the one page that I really want to stress here. At the very top, we have our strategic plan leader toolkit. There's a lot of social media stuff in here as well that I would love to point you all towards. There is just a wealth of information here about how you can really integrate the strategic plan, especially the newly revamped model from this year, into all of your work. Membership Matters is also linked from here. So this is a repository of past issues that if you're not getting it, and again, if you're not getting Membership Matters, please let me know. It is a very important leader resource. We do a lot of work on that every month to make sure we're giving you the latest and greatest of all things, membership, fundraising, five-star, even just general, good to know updates. If you're not getting that or Mission in Action, I think Membership Matters, I think, is more of a leader resource, but we also try and reinforce some of that in Mission in Action as well. What I really want you to go to, and this is why I'm not a big fan of having to scroll and click through all these resources to get you to the big repository. I do want to hover here on Community Hub Tools and Resources. This has a great wealth of information. If you scroll down, we have a lot more video resources for doing all kinds of things with manipulating your roster, adding, renewing, making gifts. All of that is, really here. And there's a lot of great resources if for like self-renewing members, et cetera. There's a lot of good video resources here as well. But again, scrolling a little further down, state and branch tools, and we're going to definitely talk about making this a little bit more above the fold than it is right now. But here on the state and branch tools page, scroll down here, there is just a plethora of information. The Shape the Future, the campaign. You can link back to Community Hub resources, reporting branch contributions. This is another link that I have on there for the contribution report form. I mentioned that earlier. speaker request. I mentioned this in another one of the breakouts where I hear that there's going to be a lovely centennial being celebrated next September. If you want, someone from AAUW National to be a part of that, this is one place where you can go for that. Mailing list order form. This is a good resource if you're looking to get information on national members, unaffiliated members that don't have a branch affiliation that you might want to do some recruitment with. This is another resource that you can use to request that information. Uh, Logos and branding, membership forms. There's a lot of, so there's, this is really, I think, one of the central hubs, and this is why I'm a little peeved that it is this hard to get to. And that's something I'm going to be talking with our communications folks. And again, here at the very bottom, of course, is how you can register for office hours. We offer them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm going to scroll all the way back up to the top. I'm going to go actually back to the home page here. Take Action is another good hub where you can get a lot of the public policy and advocacy based resources if you're looking for them. So if we click here, again, you don't have to go too far. Right here at the top, the navigation buttons really guide you towards, 2-minute activist if you're looking for that. Policy updates, obviously there's a lot of policy updates right now, but that is going to give you that information. The advocacy toolkit is very rich. It's very rich. The team spent a lot of work here. This is where you're going to get a lot of how to work with the media. How do you hold meetings with elected officials? That is something that came up. There's a lot of guidance here that is readily updated and up to date, so that way you're making sure that you're apprised and you're abiding by the latest advice and guidance from our policy gurus. And then also here the public policy priorities. This is again another big point of a part of the 5-star program. And here you can also get the latest on how you can make sure this is updated through just May, where you can make sure that, any programming that you're doing around education, economic security, all of that can be up to date and with the latest guidance and recommendations from the policy team. So that is really just two really quick links. I just want to show you how to navigate to Take Action, obviously, for a lot of the policy-based stuff. But again, the membership page, you have to kind of go through these leader resources and tools, but there's some good information here as well. But you do have to kind of work your way down to the state and tools branch link here. This is really good. Oh, and I'm almost kicking myself for skipping this. This is the DEI toolkit as well. Advocacy toolkit is also listed here. So this is a good repository as well of information if you're looking for it. But again, the state and branch tools page again is just another really strong hub and resource for a ton of materials that would be relevant to just not even and outside and above and beyond your 5-star work.